Morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Now, this morning, we are going to get off the bat by talking about CARICOM. A lot went on last week, and coming along to help us assess some of it is His Excellency Ambassador David Comissiong, Ambassador to Barbados, from Barbados to CARICOM. Good morning to you, Ambassador.
Good morning, Wendy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Always a pleasure to have you. Now, in the past week, quite a bit has happened. We had some royalty visiting our brothers and sisters in the region. We also had the U.S. congressional team down with us. A lot was happening. Let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about the royal visits. Prince Edward and Sophie, they would have visited St. Lucia, Antigua, and St. Vincent.
Very important developments with that visit, and those developments are tied directly to the CARICOM reparations campaign. You know, some of us have said that in order for the CARICOM reparations campaign to succeed, it has to become an international mass movement, similar in size and scope to the anti-apartheid movement of the 1970s and 1980s. And it has to develop to the extent where wherever representatives of the liable European governments go in the world, people of good conscience are saying to them, but what about your reparations debt to the people of Africa and the Caribbean? And Wendy, that is exactly what is happening now, because this royal tour, the first development occurred in Grenada when the Grenada Reparations Commission wrote to the Governor General of Grenada and said, look, when this royal couple visits Grenada, we want to meet with them to discuss Britain's reparations debt to the Caribbean community. And and because of that, they canceled the Grenada leg of the tour. But similarly, Antigua did a similar thing. Their reparations committee wrote an open letter saying, look, when you come to Antigua, we don't want to hear the usual, traditional, unctuous comments about slavery was regrettable. What we want is a full-fledged apology and an undertaking to commence a reparations discussion. And we want you, royal family, to say to the British government that they must commence a reparations discussion. And then in St. Vincent, you had actually people protesting and making the point about reparations. So I think this, for me, this is what is most significant about this particular visit of Prince Edward and his wife Sophie. It has demonstrated that the reparations campaign is actually taking root, and I expect that from here onwards, not only members of the royal family, but high officials of the British government and other Western European governments, that they are going to be, when they travel, they are going to be met with a very similar response from people not only in the Caribbean, but in other parts of the world as well. It has started to happen.
Now, we also had a visit from the U.S. congressional delegation, which was led by Congresswoman Maxine Waters, the chair of the House of Congress Committee on Financial Services. We were addressing the issue of blacklisting and the loss of corresponding banking services here within the region. We would have heard our own Prime Minister speak to, so many people being unbanked. How did those talks go for you?
Well, I had the pleasure to meet with the Congresswoman Maxine Waters, the head of that congressional delegation. She's actually the chair of the House Committee on Financial Services. So that is why these discussions with her were so important. But this whole business about um, our loss of correspondent banking relations, this go again. This connects with the issue of reparations because it goes to the question of our relationship with these powerful nations. And these powerful nations that became powerful because they profited from, really centuries of slavery, slave trade, from plundering resources from places like the Caribbean and Africa and so forth. And as a result of that history, a very unjust structural relationship has been put in place. So, for example, um, these powerful countries have established bodies. They are not international bodies like the United Nations, for example. They are really bodies established by national governments, but they arrogate to themselves the right to make rules and regulations for the rest of the world community, and particularly for countries that do not have similar power, countries like those in the Caribbean that were subjected to those centuries of slavery and exploitation. And so you have, for example, the Financial Action Task Force established by the OECD countries, the G7 and the OECD, the club of these powerful countries that determine that our countries must meet certain requirements in the financial sector, or if we don't meet these requirements, we will be blacklisted and sanctions will be applied to us. But the thing is, we have no say in any of this decision making. It is just imposed on us from above. It happens with the European Union as well. And so what is happening now, Wendy, you're going to find that in all of these relationships with these powerful entities that are only powerful because of that history, we are going to be saying to them now, look, there has to be a reparative restructuring of these relationships. You cannot be wielding this kind of power and causing us so much injury and harm when in truth and in fact, because of that history, we have a fundamental right to development, and
Well,
you
at
are
least
under a duty
now,
to facilitate our development.
yeah, at least now, Ambassador, we are in a better space because we've gotten them at the table and they have agreed that on an annual basis, we will be looking at this entire banking sector. So that's a great development coming out. Now, there was also a meeting on Friday dealing with Kerry Forum, including the Dominican Republic. And that Council of Ministers looked at the said issues or relations with the larger G7 countries, those within the European Union and the UK. How did those turn out?
Yes, and the same principle for viewers. Kerry Forum is the Caribbean Forum of African, Caribbean, and Pacific states. So the African and Caribbean and Pacific states, a large number of states that have been involved in this trade and development relationship with the European Union. Forum is the Caribbean component of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states. So it's basically CARICOM plus the Dominican Republic. So yes, we had a meeting of the Council of Ministers of Forum to look at all of these relationships that we have with the powerful European Union, the economic partnership relationship, the so-called post-Cotonou partnership, and the what we call the multi-annual indicative program. But so all of these relationships, again, they're components of a relationship between Caribbean countries that were subject to those historical processes of victimization, looting of our resources, and the powerful European Union. And what we are finding once again is that the relationship is too asymmetrical. It is still one in which the powerful European Union tends to be dictating and imposing. And so again, we are at a stage now. There's a new thinking going through the Caribbean community where we are re-examining all of these relationships. We are re-examining the history upon which they are based, and we are saying now, look, there needs to be greater equity and fairness in these relationships. Our fundamental right to development needs to be respected and taken into account. So, for example, in our relationship with the European Union, they still impose these graduation policies on countries like Barbados. So, for example, Barbados, Antigua, Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, most of the Eastern Caribbean countries are locked out of the concessional and of the national developmental aid aspect of these relationships. Also, many of the programs that are implemented through this relationship is determined by the European Union and not by us. So we are re-examining all of these relationships with these powerful nations that have come out of that history, not to do away with them, but to say, look, we need a greater recognition of what is owed to us, because we now have a fundamental right to development, and that right to development must be facilitated, and it must be facilitated within the context of a more just and equal and participatory relationship.
Because what we're looking at is equity and partnership as opposed to master and enslavement. I want to thank you so much, Ambassador Comissiong, for joining us. Here's hoping that these talks bear all the fruit which we in the region need as we look toward becoming more of us moving up toward that status of sovereignty and being our own masters. Thank you once again, and I'm sure that you have a full plate in the week ahead, so I wish you well.
Yes, it's very, very busy, a very busy time for us, Wendy. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Morning.